I would like to say that I'm actually delighted to be here, but the truth is that I'm terrified. And you might realize that that's pretty hard for me to be, since for over 42 years I've been Jason's mother. So there's not a whole lot left that could terrify me. But with the magic of modern pharmaceuticals, I think I'll get through this. Is anybody here from Pike County? I mean, that would admit it, years ago. No, Abby and Jason, is that it? Anybody here been to Pike County? All right. Anybody want to go to Pike? Well, never mind. We'll skip that one. Has anybody here ever been in a car wreck? Woo, lots of you. Have you ever known someone who died or who was seriously injured in a car wreck? Yeah, okay. What do I do here, Jason? Okay. I'm computer challenged.
That's that pesky thing that someone needs to show me how to get off my computer. There you go.
Okay.
That didn't work either.
Well, you got to get rid of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you
Okay.
go.
The reason I'm here is that I coordinate a team whose work has resulted in a 30% reduction in traffic crashes in Pike County over the past 3 years. Now, I know that there are 4 years on this little slide, but we didn't start until April of 2012 after trying to analyze why we had so many in 2011. For those of you who aren't familiar with highway safety facts and figures, let me assure you that we've managed to accomplish the remarkable in changing the behavior of drivers on our roads. 557 fewer crashes in just 3 years. Pike County is the largest county in Kentucky geographically. We have about 75,000, 80,000 people in the county. The county seat, however, of Pikeville is a small town of about 6,000 people. Changing the behavior of the drivers on our roadways is influencing behavior, and that's what all of us in this room are about in one way or another. And we all know that changing people's behavior is probably one of the most difficult things anybody can try to do. I mean, anybody who's ever had children knows that. Yeah, well, hell, anybody who's ever been married knows that. That's why I'm not. We combined traditional media in kind of new ways and eased into social media as it became more accessible and influential in our cell tower challenged neighborhood. In our neck of the woods, there were so many places that you couldn't get a signal for anything that many people wouldn't even buy cell phones or use cell phones because there were only a few spots where they could get a signal. So that's why. But the combination of traditional media and then easing into social media as it became more accessible in Pike County is why Jason chose the title of this presentation, Integrated Communications. So here's our story. In 2011, Pike County led the state in overall highway safety concerns. Now, basically, that means when you factor in total highway crashes per million miles driven to give a level playing field, injuries, fatalities, property damage crashes, and things like seatbelt usage, we were the #1 worst county in Kentucky. Now, people in Pike County like to be #1. We're very proud of our place. We have a university whose basketball team won the NAIA a few years ago. We have the current high school AAA football champions. We have an osteopathic school of medicine. We'll have an optometry school in a year or so. Our medical center was just certified as a trauma center. We have a history museum, 5 public libraries in the county, the most award-winning community theater in Kentucky, plus a professional theater group. These are just random to show you what some of our roads look like. They don't have anything to do with what I'm saying. Alltech is building a distillery smack dab in the middle of downtown. Dueling barrels, moonshine, and bourbon. Jason, did you hear that? Are going to be manufactured in Pikeville. The building they tore down to build their new building used to be a funeral home. I don't know if there ain't connection there, but anyway, we are retraining. I was very fascinated by what Rachel had to say. We are retraining coal miners to write code. Got a startup company that Justin Hall, who's a friend of Jason's from Model City Daycare days, is the president and CEO of this effort that just started. Heck, we even have 8 zip lines, and I've been down them all. We've got whitewater rafting. We've got a pretty good start on heritage tourism if you're interested in the Hatfields and McCoys. And we are the state's third largest financial center. So we are attracting medical specialists and academics and industry leaders faster than any other small former coal mining town and county in central Appalachia. But in early 2012, we discovered that we were bringing them to the most dangerous roadways in Kentucky, and we didn't even know it. How could we tout the advantages of our community and expect people to risk their lives on our highways? How could we tolerate this for ourselves? Highway safety is as much a quality of life issue as parks, libraries, sports facilities, and access to quality health care. Now, I work for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet as the information officer at Highway District 12, which covers 7 counties, including Pike. And the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety had all these stats based on data collected from police reports that are turned into the Kentucky State Police, and they have this huge database. And all law enforcement agencies, city police, sheriff's departments, are required to turn in copies of all their crash reports to the state police. So it's all inclusive, at least all the things that are reported. And the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety asked our chief district engineer to form a team to address the problem. The chief, who's my boss, in turn asked me to do it. Not because I knew anything much about highway safety, because I didn't at the time, but because I knew how to put together a team. Oh, and by the way, you have no money, no budget, no staff allocated for this project, no staff time allocated. Just work in it under that category of and other duties as assigned by your supervisor. You ever had one of those? So, there's the list of the organizations and agencies who initially had representation on our team. You know, in private, I just rolled my eyes because I knew that, the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety wanted the mayors, the county judge executive, police chiefs, first responders, hospital administrators, the KSP post captain, the county sheriff, the jailer. In other words, another DSA group is what my mother and I used to call them, damn sit-arounds. In private, as I said, I rolled my eyes. Oh, here, I'm back to you now, Jason. I knew that these people, I won't waste time here. I knew these people could not participate in something like this with enough time to make a difference. All they needed was one more meeting on their schedules, but I needed their buy-in, and they certainly needed to know what we were about. So I'm one of these people that when you tell me I'm responsible for something, I go do it, and I don't ask permission along the way. I beg for forgiveness after I've screwed up or done something that you wouldn't have done that way, you know. But my bosses know that, and I'm still there. So I contacted each one of these people individually, the sheriff, the mayors. We've got 3 incorporated communities in Pike County. The county judge executive, the police chiefs, the captain of the KSP post, you know. And I invited each one to support the cause and to appoint someone who was a worker bee to actually be on the team. So, this is, plus I invited the traditional media people to be on the team. You know, I wanted them to be part of what we did and not just people that we go to for help after we think we've got it all figured out. The media folks live in our community too, and their children ride our school buses, and they have teenagers getting their driver's licenses, and they drive the same roads we do. So I didn't ask them to cover the meetings as news stories. I asked them to be a part of the team. But guess what? The meetings got covered as news stories also. We asked Highway Safety Office in Frankfort to come up with some crash data for our roads. And this is a picture of one of our typical team meetings. We have pretty good attendance, but we don't meet on a regular basis. We just meet when we have something to talk about because I just can't stand, you know, meetings for the sake of meetings. I won't do it. We asked the Highway Safety to come up with some information that would show us where these wrecks were happening. And maybe that could give us some idea of how to tackle the problem. Now, we figured that most of them, especially the fatal crashes, would be on US 23. That's our equivalent of an interstate. We have no parkways or interstates in Pike County. So, every dot on that map represents a crash. The yellow ones are property damage only. The blue dots are injury crashes, serious enough to go to a medical facility, and the red dots are fatalities. And that's from 2008 through 2011. There's probably not 100-foot stretch of road anywhere in Pike County that hasn't had a wreck on it. I mean, that looks like a virus. It looks like bacteria under a microscope. It is a virus. We were killing ourselves. And then wondering why our insurance rates are so high. You know, when companies figure up the property damage costs to them, not to mention what's involved in fatalities, from that many crashes, well, I think you can figure out the rest as far as why our insurance rates are so high. So we said, okay, it's not just US 23. It's everywhere. So it can't be the roads because the roads are all different sorts of roads. It's got to be the drivers. You know, we always want to blame the roads, you know, like blaming the tree that, you know, jumped out and hit our car. And especially in a fatality situation, we don't want to say that the driver who got killed was responsible for these people are grieving. You know, it's a tragedy. The family's torn apart. But the fact is, the word accident should be eliminated from our vocabulary. There are very few, very, very few, at least in Pike County, and I think it's probably pretty typical, going through crash reports, as I have for the past 3 years, very few that you could call an accident. A crash, a wreck, a collision. But they're not accidents. There was a human decision, a human error, a decision or an error that caused what happened. So, anyway, there's my little rant. So we wanted to know what caused these crashes, so we went back to the KSP database, and looked again, and we got this is my effort at a pie chart. Pretty simple. We thought, again, we were shocked because we thought that most of the crashes were probably caused by people who were drunk or higher than groceries and were or both, and that's not the case. If you look at the alcohol, 4.6%, and the drugs other than alcohol, 5.6%. What, 10.2%? Distracted driving, not paying attention, was causing almost 44% of our crashes. The next biggest problem we had was aggressive driving. Now, that includes things like speeding up when the light turns yellow, tailgating, weaving in and out of traffic, failure to yield right away, turning off without using a turn signal. All those are considered to be aggressive driving actions. The third cause was speeding. Now, some crashes, of course, there was a combination of these causes. But we had to come to grips with the fact that most of the crashes are being caused by people like us. Not those kids that are out there, wasted. I mean, if you look, yeah, that's a problem. But if we eliminated all of those, that wouldn't solve our problem. Besides which, we probably can't talk to them because, it's like someone I know that I used to say, I'm not talking to you, darling. I'm talking to Opal right now. And Opal was Oxycontin, Percocet, and Lortab. I said, when you named her name, are back, come and see me. So those people are less likely to pay attention to a message anyway, and they're not the majority. All right, so we made the following decisions: that a huge majority of our crashes are caused by people like you and me. And so that would be our target group. And most people believe that they are safe drivers. Even Jason thinks he's a safe driver. Oh, my God. They do not recognize their unsafe driving behaviors. They think those other people are the ones that are causing all the wrecks. Those other people, and they don't belong to that group. And we felt, and part of the reason is that the crashes that involve drugs and alcohol are more spectacular, and they're covered by the media. That's what the media has, not intentionally, but those are the crashes we see we get Facebook links on, and that we see on television, and that we read about in the newspaper. Those are the crashes that get the media attention, are the spectacular ones where drugs and alcohol are involved. That's why we think that's what's causing most of them, or at least that was our group's conclusion. But we felt that if we could convince people that they might be part of the problem, most people would self-correct, and we would see a drop in crash rates, especially if we could point out that it might be a way to lower our insurance rates. Because insurance companies do look at how much they pay out for property damage, and we had a lot of that. Every dot on that map represented some sort of property damage. Now, some people said, oh, that's naive. Well, we had nothing to lose. But if we couldn't urge people to change their unsafe driving habits, then we couldn't hope to lower our crash rate anyway. You cannot driver-proof roads, and you cannot legislate safe behavior. So we had to call it something, so we called it Drive Down. Drive down traffic crashes, drive down insurance rates, whatever you wanted to use it for. We wanted to create a culture in which it is not socially acceptable to be an unsafe driver in Pike County. Now, there are areas where that culture exists, And Jason can tell you about Portland, Oregon, and the points he has on his Kentucky license because of that experience. We have to quit blaming the roads and the other drivers and quit being critical about why there's no guardrail here or no traffic signal there or why the police do not want to write traffic tickets. And that, however, has changed in Pike County, but that's a whole nother story for another time. Our police are motivated now to write moving violation tickets because they're no longer being fixed like they were being fixed. Anyway, we have to let the drivers on our roads know that the safest thing about your vehicle is you. It's pretty simple. We had to figure out a way to reach people as close to one-on-one as possible and trust that when they had a better understanding of things, the light bulb would go off and they would change their behavior. But first, each person on the team took a private inventory of our own driving behaviors. We talked with the law enforcement people who were there about why they thought they could drive 85 in a 55-mile zone when they weren't going anywhere, and what kind of an example that set. We talked about why we waited until we were pulling on the road to hunt for that CD we want to put in. Why we go through a drive-thru for breakfast and didn't get the wrapper off the breakfast biscuit before we got back out on the road. If we're going to convince others, we had to be trying to do better ourselves. And, my deal was getting fixed. Get the heater or the air conditioner or whatever fixed, get my seatbelt on, get my Diet Coke where I want it to be, just get fixed, And also, a problem I had was I had an urge to pick up things that slide off the passenger seat. I don't know where I thought they were going, but if my purse slid off the passenger seat, I was like this, Well, that was taking my eyes off the road. That's distracted driving. You wouldn't believe some of the things that were on some of these. Yeah, you would. You're smart folks. You'll believe this. Some of the things that were on these distracted driving reports. Holding a pet or an infant while driving. Eating while driving. Turning to smack children in the back seat. Lighting cigarettes. Reading a newspaper. Getting something off the floor. Guilty. Putting on makeup. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. How many of you have tried to put your mascara on while driving, thinking, oh, the light's going to turn red, I can do it right here, So anyway, in 2012, Facebook was just starting to become popular in eastern Kentucky, and Twitter and other social media platforms, not so much yet because, large numbers of people were just figuring out how to use websites. Texting was in its infancy in Pike County. Even state workers with state-issued cell phones did not have permission to use the texting feature. There were so many dead places in the mountains and the valleys of the state's largest county that some people didn't even have cell phones because there were more places where they couldn't get a signal than places where they could. We really didn't have the towers, and we certainly didn't have broadband. You may have read recently about SOAR's efforts, Governor Beshear and Hal Rogers' initiative to get broadband into all of eastern Kentucky. Anyway, we have an interesting media mix in Pike County. There's no daily newspaper. The Appalachian News Express publishes 3 times a week, and at the time there was no local commercial television station. The local station is in Hazard, which is about 80 miles away. But we have a huge radio presence in the county. Since anyone can remember, radio has been the most reliable medium simply because of the terrain and the immediacy of radio. East Kentucky Broadcasting has 14 radio stations, all of them operated out of studios in one building in Pikeville. So I met with the folks at East Kentucky Broadcasting and asked if they would consider taking on highway safety as a project. After they saw that map, and we talked for a little bit, they were eager to do so, and not for some specified finite amount of time. The program director said, we need to do this indefinitely until things change majorly and stay that way. So a partnership was born, one that reaches more people than we could touch any other way, especially when you consider that EKB now donates thousands of dollars of airtime every week to highway safety issues and messages. EKB has websites and Facebook pages with mobile apps for all of its stations, which are grouped into networks, and each of our team partner agencies have websites and Facebook pages. No one has to have permission to post about our activities and events. We don't have consultants and some big plan that says this logo has to be on everything we do. We just want the message out there, and we want to reach as many people as possible with it. It doesn't take long for people to start sharing posts, as you know, when you have as many people and agencies on the team as we do. They put everything on their personal pages as well as their agencies' pages. Now, I suppose you could say that our approach is one of what Seth Godin calls sloppy ties with sufficient mass. If any of you read Seth's blog. Everyone on the team worked in a position or for an agency or an organization that had a vested interest in highway safety, so they were motivated to help. We didn't ask our team members to do anything other than what they had been doing as far as events and activities. We just developed an atmosphere of camaraderie, and the left hand started to figure out what the right hand was doing or not doing, and those who were not doing started to get it together because they were a little embarrassed. We started helping each other with our events and activities. Our law enforcement agencies now work together on targeted enforcement campaigns. You've heard Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, Click It or Ticket. These are funded through the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety with federal funds. Officers can volunteer to work overtime, and they're paid overtime to work in these targeted campaigns. But in our county, the sheriff's department, the state police, and the city police didn't even talk to each other about how they were going to do their enforcement. They didn't coordinate anything. They do now because they're all part of our Pike County Highway Safety Team. East Kentucky Broadcasting provides rewards and incentives for people who are caught driving safely. Yeah, we even do the nighttime enforcement on these things too. There's some kids that just went through a child safety seat inspection. These are officers giving out good tickets. We had Appalachian Wireless sponsored our Click It or Ticket campaign. If you were stopped at these road checks and everybody in your vehicle was properly restrained, you got a T-shirt. You see the gray one on the front, it says, I got caught by the police, and on the back it says, wearing my seatbelt. We also gave them actual tickets with numbers on them where they could win a Bluetooth headset or an iPhone with a year's service. So we have plans to set up a designated driver's table at one of the Expo Center concerts. And when people come in for a show, like Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard are going to be there later this month, the group's designated driver can sign up to win a big prize. Plus, on the way out, anyone who wants to can take a disposable breathalyzer test, and if they decide they need a ride home, we'll have someone take them home. Totally voluntary. We have several hundred of these little gizmos. They're one-time disposable breathalyzers. And again, we had a benefactor to pay for all these. This particular box expired in April of 2014, but Jason, I bet you could make it do something. So I'm going to let you have this. You can share with your friends. There's 100 of them. Okay. Aren't you thrilled? Oh, wow. Okay. Members of the team are more assertive about planning special events for high school students. In fact, yesterday, the Drunk and Distracted Driving 3D demonstration was at Shelby Valley High School. They used golf carts with the Fatal Vision goggles to show high school juniors and seniors what it's like to be an impaired driver. That's one of the distracted driving simulators. There's also a rollover simulator that shows what happens when you're going 35 miles an hour in a pickup truck and it rolls over and you don't have a seatbelt on, and how you're ejected. Tragically, just this week, we had a 4-year-old who was ejected when his family's vehicle went over an embankment. The infant was in an infant seat, properly restrained. The 4-year-old was not, and was ejected from the vehicle, and then the vehicle ran over him and killed him. So that's one of our fatalities this year. Please pray. His name was Eli Bullock. Please pray for his parents. Anyway, none of this is anything new. All these things are just getting more attention because people love to post pictures on Facebook and Twitter of themselves doing stuff like trying to play cornhole with Fatal Vision goggles on during hillbilly days. That's always fun. People do like that. We actually had one guy that made it one time. He wanted to know what his prize was because all we had was the T-shirts. In 2012, when we started, social media did not yet impact large numbers of people in Pike County. Now, social media is the digital equivalent of word of mouth, still the most influential form of communication. Now, we post some shock value videos, the turnaround, don't drown type, and a few that show the sedan crushed under the back of an 18-wheeler with the cell phone still in the driver's seat. But mostly, we try to concentrate on encouraging people to inventory and take account of their driving behaviors and figure out for themselves what they need to change. Now, on that day, I think we just told everybody to stay at the house. Now, I'm showing you this because it was information on what happens when the temperatures get to 0 or below and the highway snowplows, the salt doesn't work. The chemicals don't work at those temperatures. And this was on a Sunday morning. We had a prediction of a storm for Sunday night into Monday morning. And the only reason, this is the kind of information that we're putting out there. It's not sexy. It's not exciting. It doesn't have videos and visuals to go with it. But look at how many people it reached. Look at the reach of that one boring gray post. Because people were hungry for that information. They didn't know if they should go to church that day. They didn't know if they were going to be able to get to work the next day. This is just a shot of a link from the Hazard TV station of 2011 to 2013, what our success had been, and you can see number of traffic accidents, I hate that word accident, in Pike County continue to decline. Since 2012, we've dropped from the number 1 worst county to number 6. So far this year, it appears that we're still falling. We'd like to be number 120, but we realize that one of the keys to success in this effort to change human behavior is to realize that it happens slowly. And we have to be satisfied with starting a downward trend with crashes and an upward trend in seatbelt use. We started out with around 65-70%, and it's almost 80% now. And the other 20% are Bubbas and their daddies and granddaddies who all drive pickups with gun racks, and I'm not going to get into a conversation with them. So new drivers are being licensed every day, and education of these young people is key. Some of our team members concentrate just on that and nothing else. And if we've learned nothing else, we've found out that we quit calling these things accidents, and I would urge you all to eliminate that word from your vocabulary and think about it. We don't preach. We don't have some organized, well-funded marketing campaign that bombards people with a consistent message and a logo. But we are confident, though, that at some point, if we keep on keeping on, it will no longer be socially or politically acceptable to be an unsafe driver in Pike County. It won't be acceptable to text and drive or speed up when the light turns yellow or turn off the road without using a signal or refer to the passing lane as the fast lane. You know the speed limit is the same in both lanes? Isn't that a novel idea? And while we started out with traditional media, social media keeps us alive when the traditional media turn their attention to other things. The people have taken to the cause, and they're keeping it a topic of conversation through their individual posts. We already know we've saved lives, prevented tragedy and needless pain and suffering. We just know it because we can imagine what might have happened to people if those 557 crashes we did not have had actually occurred. And that's good enough for us. Our ROI is great. We've spent $0, had zero budget, and whatever other metrics we may not have, we just know we've made a difference. Thank you. Oh, and I got some freebies for you up here, too. If you'll give me a caption for that first picture, whoever gives me the best caption gets the caption.